Música. Intro suave, melancólica, com um toque de tensão sutil. Cena. Imagem embaçada de luzes fluorescentes em um corredor longo. Foco lento em uma mão enrugada, segurando uma carteira de couro desgastada. Minha mãe sempre foi a rocha. Firme, inabalável. Mesmo agora, com a pele mais fina, as juntas dos dedos inchadas. Ela irradiava uma dignidade que me sufocava. Eu a observei da entrada. Como sempre, ela andava com passos lentos, mas determinados. Não reclamava. Nunca. Ambiente. Zumbido de luzes fluorescentes, murmúrios distantes, batidas leves de caixas registradoras. Place. A bustling neighborhood pharmacy. A fila era longa, como sempre naquele horário de pico. Pessoas com tosse, crianças inquietas, olhos cansados. Minha mãe se posicionou, um suspiro quase inaudível. Action. She waits patiently, her small frame, a quiet presence in the line. Ela tinha o ar de quem esperava. A vida tinha lhe ensinado isso. A receita médica em uma mão, a carteira na outra. Seus ombros levemente curvados, mas sua cabeça sempre erguida. Social pressure. A long, impatient line. Other customers glance at their watches. Pessoas atrás dela começaram a murmurar. Um homem impaciente atrás de mim pigarreou alto. O cheiro de álcool e medicamentos pairava no ar. Pesado. Hospitalar. Emotional beat. My mother's quiet fortitude. My own rising anxiety. A familiar knot. Eu senti aquela pontada, aquela velha incômoda sensação, aquele frio na espinha que sempre vinha quando minha mãe estava prestes a interagir com o sistema. Era um pressentimento, um velho inimigo. Lembrei-me do meu pai, suas palavras sobre ser 2 vezes melhor. Minhas mãos se fecharam em punho, escondidas nos bolsos. Tiaze. I watched, an unmoving shadow. My presence, a silent question mark, no one else seemed to notice. Ninguém notou a intensidade do meu olhar, a calma controlada em meu rosto. Não ainda. Silêncio. Place. The pharmacy counter. Finalmente, a vez dela. Um jovem farmacêutico, com o nome Mark na etiqueta, chamou-a. Ele parecia apressado. Seus olhos, sem paciência. Action. My mother politely presents her prescription and her insurance card. Bom dia, ela disse, a voz suave, mas clara. Ela estendeu os itens. Seus óculos escorregaram ligeiramente pelo nariz. Ele pegou tudo sem um sorriso. Sem sequer um olá. Social pressure. The line behind us visibly shortens. People lean in, listening, whether they mean to or not. A fila encolheu um pouco, mas os olhares ainda estavam lá. O próximo cliente já se aproximava, respirando em seu pescoço. Eu mantive minha distância, observando cada detalhe. O suor na testa do farmacêutico. O leve tremor nas mãos da minha mãe. Emotional beat. My mother's unwavering politeness. My internal alarm bells ringing louder. Minha mãe era sempre educada. Era seu modo de se defender. A voz do meu avô veio à mente. Sempre dê a eles menos do que esperam de você. Sempre. Eu senti o calor subindo pelo meu pescoço. Uma raiva fria começou a borbulhar. Tease. Mark didn't meet her eyes. He scanned the card, then paused. A flicker of something in his expression. Recognition, or something else entirely. O farmacêutico digitou. Seu rosto contraído. Então ele parou. Seus olhos se moveram para a tela. E, de repente, seus lábios se curvaram em uma linha fina. SFX. Bip agudo de um scanner, seguido de um clique seco. Place. Still at the counter. A few tense moments later. Mark retornou. A receita e o cartão da minha mãe em suas mãos. Ele os segurou, quase como se estivesse com nojo. Action. Ma'am, your insurance shows as expired. His voice was flat. Final. Senhora, ele disse sem emoção. Seu seguro parece estar vencido. Aquelas palavras, um choque, um golpe. Eles atingiram o ar, e a todos que ouviram. Social pressure. The line behind us stirred. A woman coughed awkwardly. A palpable shift in the atmosphere. Burburinho baixo. Olhares curiosos se voltaram para minha mãe. Os rostos antes entediados agora carregavam um misto de fofoca e desprezo. Minha mãe hesitou. Sua respiração, uma pausa. Emotional beat. My mother's face fell, the dignity wavering, replaced by a flash of public shame. My own body locked. Eu via a cor esvair de seu rosto. Aquele brilho em seus olhos se apagou. Ela estendeu a mão, um tremor, para pegar o cartão dela. Era a vergonha, a humilhação que eu conhecia tão bem, que ela conhecia tão bem. Meu estômago se contraiu. Meus dentes se cerraram. Tease. Mark avoided her gaze, but his eyes darted to mine for a split second. A fleeting, almost imperceptível acknowledgement. Then, nothing. O farmacêutico nem olhou para ela. Ele olhou para mim, por um fragmento de segundo, um reconhecimento, ou um desafio. Ele não sabia com quem estava mexendo. Não ainda. Música. A tensão aumenta. Notas graves e dissonantes. Place. The pharmacy counter. Mas eu renovei, minha mãe murmurou. Sua voz, agora um fio. Ela pegou o cartão, olhou para ele, para Mark, como se pudesse implorar por lógica. É para o meu coração, ela continuou. Eu preciso dele. Action. Mark remained inflexible, repeating policy and shrugging off her play. Nossas telas dizem que está vencido, senhora, ele repetiu. Nenhuma mudança de tom. Ele gesticulou vagamente para a tela do computador. É política da empresa. Não podemos dispensar sem uma cobertura ativa. Nenhuma empatia. Nenhuma oferta de ajuda. Apenas política. Social pressure. The line now actively muttered. Some customers looked away, uncomfortable. Others stared, openly judgmental. Os murmúrios aumentaram. Que absurdo! Pobre mulher! Mas ninguém interveio. Ninguém. A linha se dissolveu em pequenos grupos, todos observando o espetáculo. Um homem de terno, mais à frente, fingiu ler uma revista. Ele não levantou os olhos. Emotional beat. My mother's quiet desperation. My silent fury, solidifying into a cold, hard. Resolve. This wasn't just a policy, it was a pattern. Sua dignidade estava sendo testada. Em público, ela não chorava, não gritava, não se humilhava mais do que já fora humilhada. Ela era uma mulher negra, idosa, na América. Eu conhecia essa história. Eu tinha essa história. Minha raiva era um forno, queimando em silêncio. Eu pensei em meu pai. Ele sempre dizia, as pessoas vão te testar, elas vão te diminuir, mas a verdadeira força está em como você responde. Tease. My gaze settled on Mark, then drifted to a small framed certificate behind him. A license, a name, a target. Meus olhos fixaram em Mark. Então, deslizou para uma moldura atrás dele, uma licença, um nome, um pequeno detalhe que ninguém mais notaria. Mas eu sim, eu sempre noto. SFX. O barulho de um bip irritante da máquina de cartão de crédito em segundo plano. Place. Pharmacy counter. Now a small crowd has gathered. Há algo que possamos fazer? Minha mãe perguntou, sua voz falhando. A esperança em seus olhos. Mínima. Era a esperança de que houvesse bondade. Bom senso. Action. A manager, a stern-faced woman named Brenda, was called over. She reiterated the no exceptions rule. Mark chamou uma gerente, Brenda. Ela veio, uma mulher com um coque apertado e um sorriso forçado. Não podemos fazer isso, Brenda disse mais alto, para todos ouvirem. É contra a política. Se o sistema diz vencido, está vencido. Social pressure. Brenda's voice was loud, dismissing my mother's distress for all to hear. Some customers nodded in agreement with Brenda. A gerente parecia orgulhosa de sua inflexibilidade. Ela não se dirigiu à minha mãe com um pingo de respeito. Seus olhos varreram a sala, procurando por aprovação, e a encontraram. Vários clientes concordaram com a cabeça. Seus rostos impassíveis. A solidão de minha mãe era palpável. Eu senti cada pontada. Emotional beat. My mother's eyes met mine across the space, a flash of helplessness, then a familiar steel. My resolve solidified. Ela encontrou meus olhos, por um instante. Aquele olhar me transmitiu tudo: a dor, a injustiça, a aceitação relutante. E eu a vi se fortalecer. Ela era uma montanha. Mesmo sob ataque, eu respirei fundo, uma promessa silenciosa. Eu não iria mais permitir isso. Nunca mais. Tease. I pulled out my phone. Not to call someone, not yet, but to type a few words into an obscure app. A note, a date, a name. A clock started ticking. Minha mão deslizou para meu bolso. Meu polegar digitou. Não liguei. Apenas algumas palavras em um aplicativo pouco conhecido. Uma data, um nome, um endereço. O relógio começou a fazer tic-tac. Silêncio. Place. Pharmacy exit. Sunlight streamed through the glass doors. Minha mãe andou em direção à saída. Devagar. Suas mãos vazias. Seu corpo um pouco menor. Ela não olhou para trás. Não deu a eles o prazer. Action. My mother walked out, head held high, empty-handed. I followed. A silent shadow. Eu a segui, a poucos passos de distância. Meu corpo era uma parede entre ela e os olhares. O sol lá fora parecia um insulto, brilhando tão forte. Social pressure. A few sympathetic glances from exiting customers. Mostly, people avoided eye contact. Alguns clientes saindo do supermercado ao lado olharam. Seus olhos diziam, sinto muito. Mas suas ações, nenhuma. Eles apressaram o passo. Fingiram não ver. Emotional beat. The bitter taste of injustice. The urgent need to protect my mother. The vivid memory of my father's wisdom. O gosto do fel na minha boca. Amargo. Era a mesma amargura de décadas, de séculos. Eu me lembrei do meu pai quando eu era um menino. Filho, ele disse, conhecimento é poder. Use-o com sabedoria, mas use-o. Minha mãe parou na calçada. Respirou fundo, como se estivesse limpando a alma. Daisy. My grip tightened on the small, heavy object in my pocket. A badge. A card. A secret that was about to become very public. Minha mão apertou um objeto pesado no meu bolso. Não era uma arma, não um telefone para chamar a polícia. Era algo mais silencioso, mais letal. Uma identidade, um poder. Eles estavam prestes a aprender. A lição mais difícil de suas vidas, música, tema principal, agora mais forte e com um tom de determinação. Silêncio. The sterile scent of the pharmacy clung to her clothes, even in the car. My mother sat beside me, silent. Her hands, usually so busy, were clasped tight, empty. The paper bag, crumpled, lay on the dashboard. No medication inside. Ambiente. Tráfego distante. Buzinas abafadas. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The engine idled. A tremor ran through my arm. Not from cold, from a heat that started in my gut and burned its way up. Her silence was louder than any scream. Her dignity, so carefully held, had been chipped away. Piece by piece, by a dismissive glance, a bureaucratic shrug, a whispered lie about expired insurance. Right there, in front of strangers. Cena! Close-up na expressão contida do protagonista, os olhos fixos num ponto invisível. I could still hear the pharmacist's voice, condescending, patronizing. Ma'am, we've explained this. As if her age made her deaf to reason. As if her skin made her unworthy of care. My mother had simply nodded, a small weary nod, then turned to leave, head held high, but I saw it, the slight sag of her shoulders, the tightening around her mouth, the quiet humiliation. It was a wound I felt myself, deep and agonizing. I squeezed the steering wheel. Harder. This would not stand. Música. Uma melodia baixa e melancólica, com uma nota de tensão crescendo sutilmente. We drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past, each street lamp a fleeting judgment, each red light a pause, a moment to replay the scene, the injustice, the quiet rage simmered. It wasn't just about the medication. It was about everything, every glance, every assumption, every door subtly closed, every time she had to fight, just to be seen, just to exist. I had promised her, years ago, that I would protect her, that I would make things right. But yesterday, I had failed. I had let her face that alone, my fault, a heavy, burning weight. SFX. A porta do carro se fecha suavemente. She went straight to her room. To rest, she said. But I knew she was retreating, licking invisible wounds. I watched her go, my jaw tight. My plan began to form. Not a storm of anger. No, a precise surgical strike. This was a chess game, and they had just made their first fatal move. They had forgotten who they were playing against. They had forgotten her son, the one who remembered every slight, every dismissive word, every indignity, and stored it away for a time like this. Montagem. Cena. Mãos do protagonista digitando rapidamente em um laptop, a tela refletindo códigos complexos e nomes de empresas. Uma xícara de café esfria ao lado. Hours later, the kitchen light was the only one on. The house was quiet. My mother was asleep, or trying to be. I sat at the counter, my laptop open, a rabbit hole of data, pharmacy chains, licensing boards, corporate structures, shareholders. It was all there, a tangled web. I traced the lines, found the connections, the names, the ownership, every single detail. I needed to know everything, every lever, every weakness, every person responsible, the pharmacist, their manager, the regional director, the corporate entity, all of them. They would hear from me, but not with a shout, with a whisper, a very, very expensive whisper. Ambiente, o zumbido, baixo do computador, o leve tilintar do teclado. My mind raced, connecting dots, recalling clauses, specific regulations. I had seen similar cases, years ago, in different industries. The patterns were always the same: arrogance, negligence, a lack of accountability. But I also remembered the solutions, the precise legal maneuvers, the leverage points, the pressure valves. I leaned closer to the screen. A name popped up, a parent company, a large national healthcare group. Familiar, too familiar. A cold realization spread through me. I knew this company intimately, very, very intimately. A hint of a smile touched my lips, bitter, but determined. SFX. O clique suave do mouse, seguido por toque de notificação no celular. The clock turned past midnight, then past 2. The caffeine wore off, but my focus remained, sharper now. I found what I needed, a little-known clause, a regulatory loophole, a specific requirement for insurance verification, one they had clearly violated, willfully, carelessly, and with racial bias. I felt it, the unmistakable pattern. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they were just denying an elderly black woman. They thought she had no recourse, no voice. They were wrong, so profoundly wrong. Música. A tensão na melodia aumenta, mas ainda é contida, sugerindo uma força latente. My phone buzzed, a reminder, an early morning meeting with a different kind of authority, a different kind of power. My power. The pieces were aligning. The chessboard was set, and I was ready to move. Not a pawn, but the king. They just didn't know it yet. The first step was always the quietest. The one no one saw coming. The one that changed everything. I closed my laptop. The screen went dark, but the plan shone brightly in my mind. Tomorrow. It began tomorrow. Ambiente. Apartamento silencioso. Fora o som abafado de TV em outro cômodo. A noite veio devagar, arrastada. Cada minuto era um martelo, batendo na minha paciência, batendo na dignidade da minha mãe. SFX, som de copos sendo arrastados, uma panela leve. Eu estava na cozinha dela, preparando um chá, morno, buscando qualquer alívio, qualquer coisa que amenizasse. Cena, mãos enrugadas segurando um copo, tremendo levemente. Ela estava sentada, na poltrona favorita, os olhos fixos na janela escura, um olhar distante, mas tão presente. A dor era visível, sem precisar de palavras. Silêncio. Mãe não reclamava, nunca reclamou, mesmo quando a vida pesava. Ela sempre aguentava, sempre, mas eu via a contração no rosto dela, a forma como ela segurava o braço, bem onde a dor se instalava. Cruel. Música, melancólica, com um toque de determinação. O chá não faria muito, eu sabia. Era um placebo, um gesto de amor. Mas o remédio faria, e eles negaram. Ambiente. O som distante da cidade, buzinas abafadas. Eu me sentei ao lado dela, segurei a mão dela, fria. Vai ficar tudo bem, mãe. A voz soou mais firme do que eu sentia, mas eu tinha que ser firme, por ela. Cena. Close-up no meu rosto, olhos fixos, sem piscar. Ela apenas apertou minha mão. Um aperto fraco, mas cheio de fé. Fé em mim, que eu resolveria. Aquela fé era um peso e uma força. Transformou minha raiva em gelo, em algo afiado, pronto para cortar. Montagem. Cena. Eu pego meu celular, a tela acende, o brilho ilumina meu rosto no escuro. Cena. A mãe dorme na poltrona, coberta por um chale, a respiração pesada. Cena. Meus dedos deslizam pela tela, buscando contatos, documentos. Fim da montagem. Ambiente. O silêncio da noite, apenas o clique suave do teclado. O escritório em casa. A luz da tela no meu rosto. A madrugada avançava. Eu mergulhei nos detalhes, nos artigos, nas cláusulas miúdas. Cada palavra, cada vírgula. Tudo importava agora. SFIs. O som abafado de páginas sendo viradas digitalmente, cliques de mouse. Comecei com a farmácia, o nome da rede, seus históricos, suas infrações, padrões de serviço, avaliações de clientes. Era um poço sem fundo, de pequenas queixas, de grandes descasos, mas nada tão grave. Ainda. Cena. Documentos legais na tela, com termos destacados em vermelho. Lembrei das palavras da balconista. Seguro vencido. Não podemos fazer nada. A falta de empatia, a indiferença calculada, aquilo me corroía, mas eu mantinha a calma. Por fora. Emoção. A raiva fria se transformando em foco cirúrgico. Abri um novo arquivo, comecei a listar. Cada passo, cada interação, a hora exata, as testemunhas, as palavras usadas, construindo meu caso, tijolo por tijolo, para que não houvesse lacunas, para que não houvesse escapatória. Cena. Meus olhos se estreitam na tela, um pequeno sorriso aparece e some rapidamente. Um nome me chamou a atenção. O nome do dono da rede de farmácias. Um homem poderoso, intocável, para muitos. Mas eu conhecia o jogo dele, e os limites. Os limites dele. TEASE, um documento com o logo de uma grande corporação de saúde, com meu nome ou um nome parecido, em uma lista de acionistas ou conselho, parcialmente visível. Eu tinha que ser discreto. Por enquanto, um passo errado. E eles sumiriam, esconderiam as provas, os erros. Eu precisava de uma entrada, silenciosa. E eu sabia exatamente onde procurar. Ambiente. O zumbido sutil dos servidores de um prédio de escritórios distante. A manhã chegou. Cinzenta. O café na caneca fumegava. Mas eu não sentia o sabor. Minha mente já estava em outro lugar. Em um escritório. Longe daqui, onde as decisões são tomadas. Cena. Eu me arrumando, com um terno impecável, o olhar focado no espelho. Eu precisava de mais informações. De dentro. De pessoas que vissem, que soubessem. Pessoas que tivessem medo. Medo de perder o emprego. Medo de perder a licença. Medo do que eu poderia fazer. SFIs. A porta de um carro de luxo se fechando com um som pesado. Minha próxima parada. Não era uma farmácia. Não era um tribunal. Era um lugar onde os papéis mudam de mãos. Onde as regras são escritas. Ou reescritas. Eu precisava falar com o regulador. O órgão que licenciava aquelas farmácias. Cena. A entrada de um edifício moderno. Com o nome Departamento de Saúde Pública. Ou similar discretamente gravado acima da porta. Entrei no prédio. Imponente. Frio. Recepcionista com um sorriso falso. Olhei ao redor. Pessoas entrando e saindo. Todos com suas rotinas, seus pequenos dramas e suas grandes influências. Social pressure. A recepcionista me observa com curiosidade. Outras pessoas na fila sussurram. Eu tinha um agendamento com o diretor do departamento de licenciamento farmacêutico, um contato que eu vinha cultivando há anos, para um projeto especial. Eu disse. Ele não sabia a verdade. Ainda. Emotional beat. Uma calma controlada, mas a tensão vibrando sob a superfície. A sala de espera era estéril, silenciosa, o cheiro de desinfetante no ar, pessoas com pastas na mão. Sério, com pressa. Eu me sentei, observei, aguardando meu turno. TAZ. Um funcionário passa por mim, murmurando algo sobre novas diretrizes ou inspeções surpresa que serão anunciadas em breve. Eu já sabia o que perguntar, o que pedir e, mais importante, o que sugerir. Aquela rede de farmácias estava prestes a ter problemas, grandes problemas, e eles nem sabiam, mas logo saberiam, muito em breve. The empty bottle sat on the counter, a cruel joke, a monument to their callousness. I picked it up. The plastic was light, insignificant, but the weight it carried, that was crushing. SFX, distant city hum fading in. Place, my sleek, quiet apartment, late evening. Action. I traced the label with my thumb, the name of the medication, the dosage, the date mom's insurance supposedly expired. Social pressure. Only the silence of my home, reflecting my own thoughts. Emotional beat. A cold knot tightened in my gut. The echo of her small, humiliated voice, the way she'd shrunk in the pharmacy. I felt the impotent rage I'd swallowed then. Now it was steel. A tease. They didn't know who they were dealing with. Not yet. Musica. Subtle, low thrumming of suspenseful synth. Place. My private study, a command center of screens and data. Action. Fingers flying across keyboards, accessing encrypted databases. Corporate structures unspooled on one monitor, regulatory bodies on another. I cross-referenced names, addresses, ownership, social pressure, the soft hum of servers, the glow of information, a digital labyrinth. Emotional beat, methodical, precise, every click a deliberate step. A quiet, grim satisfaction bloomed as connections formed, invisible threads intertwining. A tease. The license itself was a spiderweb, and I knew the center. I always found the center. SFX, keyboard clicks, low data processing sounds. Place. My balcony, overlooking the city, lights shimmering below like scattered diamonds. Action. I spoke into my secure phone, voice low, almost a whisper. Not to my usual team. This was delicate. I need every audit, every complaint, every minor infraction filed against a particular entity. Pharmacy chain, District 7, last 5 years. Social pressure. The vast, indifferent expanse of the city below. My words swallowed by the night air. Emotional beat. Calculated risk. The careful laying of groundwork. each request a chess move far in advance. A tease. Certain irregularities had been flagged before, small ones, easy to overlook, until someone finally started looking. Ambiente, city night sounds, distant sirens, traffic, hum, place. My mother's modest, impeccably neat living room. Action. I watched her try to eat the home cooked meal I'd brought. Her hand trembled, a fork clattering softly against the plate. Her eyes, usually so bright, held a new, fragile fatigue. She coughed, a dry, rasping sound. Social pressure, the intimate silence between a mother and her son, the unspoken burden. Emotional beat. A fresh wave of guilt washed over me, sharp and bitter, followed by a rage so pure it burned. This was the cost. Her pain was my fuel. A tease. Every cough, every pained breath. It fueled the fire. It made the waiting harder. It made the plan sharper, more relentless. Musica. A melancholic piano chord, holding. Place. My main office. During peak business hours. Polished wood. Panoramic city view. Action. I drafted a formal letter, not a direct accusation. Not yet. This was a notice, a routine compliance review for all pharmacies in the district. It was perfectly worded, ambiguous enough to cause unease, specific enough to warrant attention. Social pressure. My assistant across the room looked up occasionally, sensing the unusual intensity, but she knew nothing of the personal storm. Emotional beat, the slow, deliberate tightening of the noose, the thrill of strategic patience. A cold certainty settled in my chest. A tease. This letter, it was just the first whisper of the storm. They wouldn't even see the cloud. SFX, pen scratching on paper, then subtle printer hum. Place. My car, parked discreetly down the street from my mother's house. Action. My phone vibrated. An unfamiliar number. I recognized the area code. It was him, Mr. Harrison, the pharmacy manager. His voice, syrupy, apologetic. Just calling to check in, Mr. Davies, about the misunderstanding. I kept my responses polite, professional, brief. I hung up swiftly. Social pressure. The ghost of our previous tense interaction hung in the air. Emotional beat. Disgust barely contained. His false concern was an insult. It solidified my resolve. No quarter. A tease. Their fake concern was a scent in the wind. They smelled trouble. They just didn't know whose trouble it was. Ambiente. Car engine, idling faintly. Place. My home office again, deep into the night. Dark, save for the glow of the screen. Action. I finally pulled up the specific document, the one I'd been tracing through layers of bureaucracy, a key clause, a certain penalty for specific violations, dereliction of duty resulting in patient harm, the maximum penalty, license revocation. Social pressure. Just me and the stark, undeniable truth laid bare on the screen. Emotional beat. A grim smile touched my lips. The puzzle pieces clicked into place perfectly, the full extent of their vulnerability. A tease. It wasn't just about expired insurance. It was about dereliction and the power to ensure compliance. The power. I wielded. Musica. Built subtly. A sense of quiet power. Place. My high-rise office. The morning sun streaming through. Action. I adjusted my tie, smoothed my suit jacket. I was preparing for a general industry meeting, but my mind was elsewhere. I glanced at the framed photo on my desk. My mother, years younger, laughing, her eyes full of life. Social pressure. My reflection in the glass, a sober, determined gaze, the looming schedule of the day. Emotional beat. A deep, centering breath. The decision was made. No turning back now. This was not just business. This was family. This was justice. A tease. Tomorrow, their world would shift on its axis, and they wouldn't know why until it was already too late. Musica fades to a low, sustained hum, then silence. Ambiente, som de monitor cardiaco suave. Place, the hospital room. Action, my mother, frail and pale, lay hooked to tubes. The doctor explained the immediate danger had passed. Her blood pressure was stabilizing, but the stress, the lack of medication, it had taken its toll. Social pressure. Nurses moved quietly. The air hummed with hushed concern. My sister held Mom's hand, tears staining her cheeks. They looked at me, waiting. Emotional beat. My chest ached, not with tears, but with a cold, solid block of rage. This was not just an inconvenience. This was an attack, a deliberate, calculated denial of care. My mother, who had given everything, reduced to this. I vowed silently it would not stand. Tease. The doctor paused, checking a chart. He mentioned the original prescription was fully covered. No issues on their end. A flicker of something in his eyes. He knew. Silencio Place. My apartment. Late night. Action. I sat at my laptop, the glow illuminating my face. Documents scrolled endlessly. Insurance policies, pharmacy regulations, complaint procedures, every line of fine print, every legal loophole. I was building a case, brick by agonizing brick. Social pressure. The city outside hummed, a distant, uncaring drone. No one watched me, but I felt the weight of expectation. My ancestors, my mother. Their struggles amplified in this quiet moment. Emotional beat. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Fatigue was a stranger. Only focus, only clarity. I remembered her trembling hands, her quiet dignity, even as they dismissed her. That image burned, fuel to my resolve. Tease. I found a pattern, a series of similar complaints, dismissed, ignored, each one a ghost of my mother's humiliation. A system designed to protect was failing, or worse, enabling. Musica, Tinsum Crescent, Sutil. Place. A high-rise office building, law firm lobby. Action. I met with a senior partner from a renowned firm. Not for my mother's case directly, but for advisory work. I spoke of systemic failures in healthcare access. Vogue, professional. He nodded, impressed by my careful phrasing. Social pressure, polished surfaces, expensive art, whispers of power and money. Associates bustled past, their faces reflecting ambition. My own face remained a mask of detached professionalism. Emotional beat. Every word I uttered was a lie by omission. Every calculated question, a probe. My gut twisted with the duplicity, but my mind saw the endgame. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about justice. And sometimes justice wore a disguise. Tease. The partner mentioned a powerful lobbying group. They had significant sway over state licensing boards. A name dropped casually. A name I recognized. SFX, Teclado, digitando rápidamente. Place, my home office, early morning. Action, I drafted official letters, formal inquiries, requests for documentation, all routed through layers, appearing to come from various concerned parties. The web of my investigation grew intricate, untraceable back to me for now. Social pressure. The empty house felt heavy. The only witness, the rising sun, casting long shadows. It was a lonely fight, but not solitary. My mother's spirit was right there with me. Emotional beat. My hand tightened on the pen. I remembered her voice, soft but firm, teaching me right from wrong. This was for her, for every unseen person dismissed, disregarded. I felt the cold fury ignite, focused and precise. Tease. One letter, addressed to the state's Pharmacy Licensing Board, was particularly detailed. It referenced obscure statutes, enforcement gaps, and, most crucially, past audit failures of the very pharmacy that had wronged my mother. Scena, close-up in un mapa complexo de nomes e setas. Place, Café downtown. Action, I sat across from an investigative journalist. I fed him information, snippets, hints of a larger story without revealing the core details of my mother's case. I painted a picture of widespread neglect, of a system designed to fail vulnerable communities. Social pressure, the clatter of coffee cups, the murmur of conversations. We were just two people discussing business. But the stakes were higher than anyone around us knew. His eyes, keen and focused, absorbed every word. Emotional beat, a knot tightened in my stomach. Was I risking too much? Exposing too many pieces of my plan? But the public needed to know. The shame of their actions deserved the spotlight. My mother deserved it. Tease. He mentioned a source inside the state health department, someone willing to talk about systemic compliance issues. He'd pursue it. The first tendrils of public scrutiny were taking root. Ambiente. Som de multidão em fundo diminuindo. Place. My lawyer's office. Discreet meeting. Action. My personal attorney reviewed the evidence I'd gathered. He raised an eyebrow, impressed by the meticulous detail. He spoke of breaches of duty and gross negligence. Social pressure. Just us. The heavy door closed, muffling the outside world. The air was thick with the weight of legal strategy. He was a trusted confidant, privy to my true intent. Emotional beat. My heart hammered, a silent drumbeat of anticipation. This was it, the moment of commitment. No turning back. I felt a surge of grim satisfaction. They would face consequences. Tease. He smiled, a rare, knowing grin. With this, he said, tapping a document marked confidential, you don't just have a case, you have control. He looked at me, waiting for my final decision. The power was mine. Ambiente, zumbido, baixo de ar-condicionado, passos apressados. O silêncio na sala dele era ensurdecedor. Ele estava atordoado. Cada ligação que não era atendida. Cada e-mail que voltava. A pilha de faturas intocadas. As prateleiras meio vazias. Henderson, o dono da farmácia, estava sozinho. Sua boca seca, seu rosto pálido. Ele esperava a minha raiva. Ele esperava uma discussão acalorada. Talvez uma ameaça legal, uma carta de advogado, mas não isso. Não o vácuo. O mundo simplesmente começou a encolher ao redor dele, como uma corda apertando devagar. Cena. Henderson sozinho no seu escritório, olhando para um telefone fixo desligado na mesa, com pilhas de papéis ao redor. Ele me viu naquele dia, um executivo de terno. Ele me viu como um filho irritado. Não como o motor que move engrenagens muito maiores, não como a mão que pode puxar a alavanca mestre. Ele sorriu, condescendente. Problemas administrativos, ele disse à minha mãe. Agora, a farmácia dele tinha problemas administrativos. Música, um tom baixo e ameaçador, quase imperceptível. A primeira ligação que ele ignorou foi da distribuidora principal. Eles revisariam o crédito dele? Do nada. Depois, uma empresa menor. Incompatibilidade de estoque, eles alegaram. As desculpas eram vagas, polidas, frias. Ninguém era mal educado. Ninguém o ameaçava. Eles simplesmente pararam de fazer negócios. SFX, teclado digitando rapidamente, clique de mouse. Meu escritório estava no andar 37. O mundo parecia pequeno de lá. Eu me inclinei sobre a mesa de ébano. Minha equipe estava em silêncio ao meu redor. Cada um em seu monitor. Cada um com uma tarefa específica. Nenhum deles sabia o quadro completo. Só que um projeto de reestruturação do setor estava em andamento. Um projeto de otimização de parcerias. Verifique cada fornecedor, eu disse. Minha voz era calma. Cada contrato, cada licença, especialmente aqueles que envolvem produtos essenciais. Minha assistente Sarah anotava freneticamente. Ela não questionava, ela executava. Eu confiava nela e em meu julgamento. Ambiente, burburinho distante de uma cidade grande. Eu lembrava do olhar da minha mãe, a vergonha naqueles olhos, o jeito que ela tentou se encolher. Tudo porque o seguro dela tinha expirado. Uma mentira, uma falha deles. Eles fizeram ela se sentir pequena. Menos que. Eu não queria que Henderson sentisse menos que. Eu queria que ele sentisse exatamente o que ele fez minha mãe sentir. Cena, transição rápida de Michael, olhando para a cidade pela janela do escritório, para um close-up de uma tela de computador mostrando dados de fornecedores. A revisão de licenças começou como um sussurro, um pedido de informação, rotina. Então, os inspetores. Não para Henderson ainda, mas para os fornecedores que faziam negócios com ele, para as empresas que garantiam seus empréstimos. A pressão se moveu como ondas concêntricas, lentamente, inevitavelmente. Silêncio. Henderson fez uma tentativa desesperada. Ele chamou o banco. O gerente, que sempre foi cordial, parecia distante. Senhor Henderson, ele disse, a voz cheia de uma estranha formalidade. Houve algumas mudanças internas. Sua linha de crédito. Bem, ela está sob revisão. Temporariamente? Temporariamente. Uma palavra que soava como um eco da eternidade. Cena. Henderson na sua farmácia, olhando para o telefone depois da ligação com o banco, sua expressão de desespero crescendo. Ele estava sozinho na farmácia. O balcão limpo, os expositores arrumados, mas havia um vazio. Os pacientes pararam de vir em massa. Os rostos regulares, que ele conhecia há anos, onde estavam eles? A notícia da denúncia, vaga, sem detalhes, havia se espalhado, como uma mancha invisível. SFX, o som de um sininho de porta de loja, abrindo e fechando, mas sem clientes. Vi um relatório sobre o declínio de sua reputação. Dados em uma planilha. Números caindo. Comentários negativos surgindo em fóruns online. Avaliações de uma estrela. Nenhuma menção ao meu nome. Nenhuma menção à minha mãe. Apenas uma maré crescente de insatisfação. Um sentimento geral negativo, que era tudo o que eu precisava. Música. A intensidade cresce ligeiramente, um senso de inevitabilidade. Eu estava de pé na minha cozinha. A luz suave da manhã filtrava pelas persianas. Uma xícara de café na minha mão. O cheiro de torrada no ar. Um contraste tão grande com a tempestade que eu estava cultivando. Eu pensei na minha mãe. Ela estava melhor. As novas medicações, sem problemas. Isso me deu força, uma motivação silenciosa. Eu peguei meu telefone. Era hora de parar de pressionar os intermediários. Era hora de ir à fonte. Eu precisava de uma reunião com as pessoas certas, as pessoas que concedem ou revogam certas permissões, as pessoas que fiscalizam, as pessoas que detêm o verdadeiro poder. Eu digitei um número. Era hora de puxar a alavanca mestre. De verdade. Música. Tense, foreboding, then a sudden shift to quiet shock. The air in the pharmacy hung thick, heavy, like a shroud. The words, license revoked, echoed, not just in my ears, but in every shocked gaze, every gasp. Sina. The pharmacist's face, pale, jaw slack. The manager, eyes wide, fumbling for a phone. My mother stood beside me. Her hand found mine. A gentle squeeze, a silent message. Her dignity unbroken. Even now. Ambiente. Murmurs, whispers, the distant wail of a siren approaching. The manager finally found his voice. A frantic croak. "You can't do this," he stammered. "This is our livelihood." His eyes darted to the police, to the bewildered customers, to me. My gaze was steady, unwavering. "It was your choice," I said. My voice was low, controlled, each word a hammer blow. "To deny a sick woman her medicine." SFX. A sharp, distinct click as a police officer secures a door. The pharmacist started to cry. Tears streamed. For her job, for her future. Not for my mother's pain. Never for that. Sina. Police officers speaking quietly with staff, instructing them to close down. The pharmacy sign flickered, then went dark, a symbolic end to their reign of callousness. But this was just the beginning. The first domino, Musica, shifts to a driving, almost investigative tone, hinting at systemic uncovering. Place, corporate headquarters, the boardroom. Days later, the polished mahogany table reflected nothing but grim faces. Mr. Henderson sat at the head, his usual bravado replaced by a strained pallor. He was on speakerphone, the voice on the other end, sharp, legal, SFX, the distinct, tinny echo of a speakerphone call. "The State Board is investigating all your licenses, Mr. Henderson." The voice was cold, uncompromising, not just the one location. "We're talking about a pattern." "Sina," Mr. Henderson pinching the bridge of his nose, sweat beading on his forehead. His lawyers shifted, uncomfortably, their expensive suits, suddenly feeling too tight. He had thought his wealth, his connections, would insulate him. He was wrong. My team had been thorough, quietly assembling evidence for months. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a system of neglect, of discrimination, emotional beat. My memory of my mother's face in the pharmacy, a flicker of pain in her eyes, fueling my resolve. "Our preliminary findings suggest widespread non-compliance," the voice continued. "Multiple complaints, unaddressed, ignored, especially concerning vulnerable populations." The words were carefully chosen, legal language, but the meaning was clear. They had targeted people, like my mother. "Tease," a lawyer whispers to Henderson, pointing to a document. "The audit from 2 years ago." Place, my mother's apartment, living room. Musica, a softer, more reflective melody with an undercurrent of strength. The evening news played softly on her small TV. The anchor's face, serious. Pharmacy chain under scrutiny. Accusations of discriminatory practices. Multiple locations facing closure. Sienna, my mother, wrapped in a blanket watching the screen. A new bottle of her medication sits on the table beside her. She sipped her tea, calm, a quiet strength in her gaze. The medication sat there, finally in her possession, a small victory, but profoundly significant. "They're talking about more than just your story, son," she said. Her voice was soft, thoughtful. "Others suffered too." My chest tightened. Yes, others. That was always the point. My mother's humiliation. A spotlight on a much darker truth. A pattern of injustice. Running deep, running wide. Tease. The news report mentions a whistleblower, a former employee, coming forward with internal documents. Place, downtown bank, private office. Musica, clinical, precise, slightly cold. The air was sterile, the silence absolute, except for the rustle of papers and the clicking of a pen. Mr. Davies, the bank's senior legal counsel, looked over the documents. Loan agreements, credit lines, investment portfolios, all belonging to Henderson's company. Sina, a close-up of financial statements, then a slow pan to Mr. Davies' serious expression. "This puts them in default," he stated. His tone was flat, professional. "On several substantial loans. A breach of our ethical conduct clause. The clause, inserted years ago, after another scandal, designed for situations like this, to protect the bank's reputation by severing ties with unethical entities. My legal team had meticulously built the case, not just against the pharmacy's operations, but against its financial structure, its foundations, designed to crumble. Emotional beat, a fleeting memory of the patronizing smiles, the dismissal in the pharmacy. This was the counterpunch. Quiet, devastating. We'll be recalling the outstanding balances, Mr. Davies confirmed, freezing available assets. Effective immediately. He looked at me, a flicker of respect, or perhaps just professional caution. A complex web you've untangled, Mr. Elijah. Tease. He pushed a folder across the table. And this is just the domestic portfolio. We're looking into their offshore accounts now. Place. A bustling diner. Corner booth. Ambiente. Clinking of cutlery. Distant chatter. The hiss of a coffee machine. The smell of coffee and fried food filled the air, a stark contrast to the hushed intensity of our conversation. Sarah, a former pharmacy technician, sat across from me. Her hands trembled slightly around her mug. Sina, Sarah, looking nervous but determined, then her hand pushing a worn envelope across the table. "I couldn't stay silent," she whispered. Her eyes darted nervously across the diner. "Not after what I saw. What they did to your mother." She pushed an envelope towards me, thick, heavy, with years of stored pain, and undeniable proof. Internal memos, shift schedules, emails, all detailing a system of deliberate understaffing, targeting low-income areas, areas like my mother's neighborhood. Emotional beat. A surge of gratitude for Sarah's courage. A renewed sense of the scale of the injustice beyond my personal experience. "They'd lose prescriptions," she explained, her voice barely audible, "especially for patients on certain insurance plans, or those they deemed problematic." It was subtle, but consistent. My jaw tightened. Subtle, insidious. That was how systemic racism worked, not always with slurs, but with policies, practices designed to disadvantage, to humiliate, tease. "There's also a separate file," she added, her eyes wide, "about the charity events. They were a front." The path ahead was still long, full of legal battles, public accusations, and the tireless work of exposing every lie. But with each new revelation, each brave soul stepping forward, the darkness began to recede, and the truth, slowly, painfully, began to shine. The fight was far from over, but the tide had undeniably turned, and for the first time in a long time, we felt hope. Música, tensão contida, virando para triunfo silencioso. Place, the pharmacy's back office. Action, their faces stripped bare of arrogance. The manager, eyes wide, mouth agape. The pharmacist, a ghost of his former self, trembling. Social pressure. Only the hushed hum of the fluorescent lights, the silence of impending doom. Emotional beat. I felt no joy, only a cold, hard clarity. This was not revenge. This was simply balance. A tease. They still didn't grasp the full weight of what was coming. I spoke, my voice low, every word a hammer blow. "Effective immediately," I stated. "Your license to operate under the state's pharmaceutical board is under review for immediate suspension." The manager made a choked sound, a desperate, fumbling attempt at a plea. "Sir, please." "A misunderstanding." I held up a hand, stopping him cold. There was no misunderstanding, only a clear pattern of negligence and outright discrimination. Silencio. Place. A sterile meeting room 3 days later. Action. My legal team laid out the evidence, the documented complaints, the timestamps of my mother's refusal, the recorded interactions. My mother's doctor had provided a sworn affidavit. Social pressure. Across the polished table sat their corporate lawyers, their expressions, once smug, now wary, defeated. Emotional beat. Each piece of evidence presented was a small victory, a tiny easing of the ache in my chest. But my mother's face, pale and tired, still haunted me. A tease. The internal investigation they were forced to conduct would uncover more rot than they imagined. Their defense crumbled. Quickly, the corporate representatives, once so dismissive, were now scrambling. Damage control. Too late. Musica, noticias, relatorios, murmurios crescentes. Place. My living room. News channels on the TV screen. My phone buzzing with alerts. Action. The story broke, not just locally, but nationally. Elderly black woman denied medication. Son revokes pharmacy license. The headlines screamed. My mother's dignified face juxtaposed with the pharmacy's logo. Social pressure. The public reaction was immediate. Outrage. Calls for accountability. Hashtags trending. Emotional beat. It was a whirlwind, a necessary storm. For every message of support, I remembered the humiliation my mother endured. The public shaming was a consequence, not a goal. A tease. The corporate entity, so vast and untouchable, was beginning to feel the squeeze from all sides. The chain stock plummeted, their reputation shattered. Other customers, emboldened by my mother's story, came forward with their own tales of neglect, of mistreatment. Montagem, cena, imagens de outras filiais da mesma farmácia, clientes insatisfeitos saindo. Cena, pessoas protestando pacificamente em frente a uma filial. Cena, manchetes de jornais online sobre a queda nas ações da empresa. Place, my mother's kitchen, bathed in the soft afternoon light. Action. My mother sat across from me. Her eyes were clearer, her posture stronger. Her medications, now readily available from a new, caring pharmacy, were doing their job. She smiled, a real smile. Social pressure. Just the two of us, a quiet moment of hard-won peace. Emotional beat. That smile was my true victory, the one I fought for, the one that made every single step worth it. But I knew the scars of that day would always remain, for both of us. A tease. The individuals involved would face their personal reckoning, far from the public eye. The manager, the pharmacist, they lost their licenses, their careers. The specific branch was shut down. Eventually, the entire chain faced massive restructuring, forced to sell off assets to avoid complete bankruptcy. They tried to erase their mistakes, but the internet remembers. The people remember. Silencio. Place. A quiet park bench. Years later. Action. I sat there, reflecting. My mother, long since passed, lived her remaining years with dignity, with access to the care she deserved. Social pressure. The world moved on around me. Children playing, birds singing, a gentle reminder of life's continuity. Emotional beat. The fight was long, the cost was high, but the lesson was clear. No injustice, no matter how small it seems, should ever be tolerated. Silence is complicity. A tease. The authority I held was a tool, a responsibility, and I vowed to always use it to protect the vulnerable. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about upholding dignity, and about reminding everyone that pure misuse will always face its reckoning. Always. Música. Fim épico, mas com uma nota de reflexão. If this story moved you, please like the video now. It helps the channel immensely. Comment below. Do you think I should have revealed the truth at that exact moment or waited? And subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because what happens next changes everything.